Welcome back to Class Evolution. Today we're going to be covering Paladins. In 2nd edition, Paladins were one of the hardest classes, if not the hardest class to get into due to the ability requirements. And in exchange for this, they were given an obscene amount of power. I mean, they were one of the earliest classes to get actually a level ability progression. I mean, level 1, they start off with some ridiculous stuff. I mean, they really did give you a very good edge for that ability requirement. And they were a very unique class concept because, unlike the cleric that was restricted to bludgeoning weapons for the most part, simple, very god-friendly ways, I guess you could say. I mean, clerics had turn undead and bludgeoning weapons, and I can't remember if they could wear a plate. Whereas the paladin got the fighter's Thaco progression, and the clerics, I believe they got some of their spells later at a point, and they got abilities. So they were this powerful hybrid class that was unmatched early levels. And they were also a very interesting story. And this is shown in the Complete Paladin's Handbook, which has some awesome kits, some awesome story ideas, some awesome background things. So right off the bat, the Paladin for AD&D 2nd edition was just a really, really cool class to play or be in a party with. It only had one flaw, and that was that you could only be lawful good, up until I think you could become a fallen paladin eventually. But by the rules, you had to start off as good. Not a big fan of that, but that's how it was. They had some of the coolest kits, though. You know, Dragon Slayer type things, Worm Slayer, Hunter of the Undead, I think it's Ghost Hunter. I mean, they had some really, really cool kits. Some people think that they gave up too much. I personally, looking through some of them, was just like, damn, I wish I was playing a paladin. But then when it evolved into 3.0 and 3.5, they lost a lot of their uniqueness. Now everyone was on that same kind of progression chart. You know, the barbarian had come through and gotten a lot of cool stuff. The monk was there. They got some cool stuff. And then they took out the requirements to be a paladin. So now just about everyone could roll up into a paladin. Not everyone wanted to do the still lawful good requirement. But they were alright. Not nearly as cool as their 2nd edition counterpart, especially with the removal of kits. Now all we had is prestige classes. So the Paladin lost a lot, in my personal opinion, in 3.5 in 2nd edition. They were still pretty cool, but just not as much. Their support was... Their kits became very, very specialized. I mean, not kits, their prestige classes that they were the most easily eligible for became very, very specialized to the point where they weren't necessarily as cool. At a certain point, some of them even seemed to require you to cross-class a little bit, and I just wasn't a fan of that. I thought the multi-classing system in 3.0 and 3.5 I'm just not a fan of. I'm sorry. I just don't like it too much. If I can avoid it, I do. But, Pathfinder came through and had a lot of it still had the same concepts. However, they did something. They removed the requirement to be a lawful good. I think they got a couple other boons, but not too much. They still stayed within that 3.5 kind of boundary. Then 4E came along and completely changed the Paladin. And in my personal opinion, not for the better. I mean, they're still suffer from the same thing they suffered from in 3.5 of being so damn similar to, you know, the fighter and some other classes out there. So they lost a lot there. they still maintained their story, and they're still these Templaric divine soldiers, and so it's pretty cool. But they lost their spells due to the fact that now everything runs on that power system, which isn't necessarily bad, but it does remove certain ability to do with things. Like, you no longer have a fighter, a paladin that can gain his spells later on. And if you actually really wanted one, I never understood it, but a ranger with spells. I mean, you can't do that anymore, which I guess wasn't a big fan of the spells for the paladins, because they ultimately ended up with only a handful. They weren't ever super useful, and due to the casting system in 3.5 and Pathfinder, close combat spells were suicide. And 4E, what the paladins did is, with the power system, they got a lot of cool abilities, don't get me wrong, and some really cool Paragon paths. And their support for 4E was just as good as all the other ones, pretty damn good. But they had lost a lot over their evolution. So, in my personal opinion, the best paladin to play is AD&D's 2nd edition paladins, because they are the most unique in their set, and they have the kit system going for them, which is just a very, very cool idea. So, I personally believe that the paladin has lost a lot since its inception, and 2nd edition is the best one with the paladin. So, until next time, have a good one.